Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to have you here, that you made it. We're honored to have you. I'm speaking on behalf of obviously myself and Antoine and Abe and Bab Al Ilm. Um, we've been now doing the open book club for, what did we say? Since April. Um, and it's so inspiring to see it growing slowly but steadily. It's forming its own little group. So we're truly honored to have you here, for you to take the time out of your day and to join in, and also to take the time and read and contemplate on the ideas that we're going to be talking about today. Um, if you're okay, I think it'll be good to kind of settle in, to get everybody settled in before we dive into the book, and the author. So we can take just a few minutes to readjust ourselves. If you want to sit up straight, if you want to just relax your body, just if you need to um, stretch, feel free to close your eyes, maybe have some soft gaze, relaxing your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, and breathing deeply yet softly. Be aware of the space that we're entering. Even though this is a virtual group, somehow we are connected. Become aware of that space. And as you're breathing, allow for that space to expand within you. And as you're exhaling, just let go of the worries of the day, the to-do list, the anxieties of the day, and we'll be there. We'll get back to it after our gathering. We're just gonna put it aside. Get to that space within yourself, that sacred space, that hidden chamber within you. Sit that space, allow it to be receptive, for it to connect with each other deeply, with who we are and with each other here in this group. And whenever you feel ready, just slowly open your eyes. Thank you for being here. Yeah. So, as you all know, the topic for this month is Effort and the Effortless Path. And we read the second chapter of The Taste of Hidden Things by Sara Sviri, who is a scholar in Islamic mysticism and Sufism. I actually have a small little snippet about her that I would like to read. So Sara Sviri is a scholar of Islamic mysticism and Sufism. She's particularly known for her deep exploration into the inner dimensions of the Sufi path. She has served as a professor at both University College of London and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where she taught Islamic studies, Sufism, and the mystical thought of Ibn Arabi. Her work emphasizes a profound integration of Sufi spirituality with deep psychology, dream work, and the exploration of the self. In The Taste of Hidden Things, which is the book that where we got the chapter from, she provides the readers with just unique access to rare Sufi teachings, weaving together the voices of mystics from the past and insightful, relevant, and modern seekers as well. When I first started reading the book, the minute I got to that second chapter, I knew, this is gonna be the one. This is gonna be the one that's gonna be my pick for the month. Um, it it spoke to me in such a way that it was speaking to me in the moment. I feel, um, even specifically when I was reading, I was like, man, is she talking to me right now? Like, what is going on? Um, so the first impression of it was just so um, it was so precise in describing what is going on or what was going on. As a matter of fact, it is still going on. So it was precisely describing what is going on as far as this dance and this tension that's between, man, I'm doing all these things. How do I surrender? What is this dance that's between this effort and the effortless path? So when I started to get deeper into it, I I knew, I was like, okay, this is definitely something that's worth diving into deeply and hearing other people's perspective on it at the same time. So I'm curious for you guys, and I guess we can utilize the reaction buttons within Zoom, like we can raise hands, I just did here. Um, I'm curious what was the first impression if you finished the reading? What was the first impression? And if not, what is the impression of just the title, The Path of Effort and the Effortless Path? Like, what was that um, for you when you got introduced to it? Austin.
Yeah, Man, like I said when I first got on, I was like, this is one of those topics that if it resonates, it's only because you've observed yourself long enough to realize that that part of you is there, right? That part of you that likes to take credit, that part of you that in such a nuanced and subtle way exalts himself or herself. And God, I remember just reading it and laughing and then getting serious and laughing and then getting serious. It's like, oh man, you're just pointing out all the little things that I've realized within me. Um, Somewhat of a painful thing to look at if you're someone who hasn't seen that part of themselves or just like just now seeing that part of themselves. But what really caught my attention, and I'm actually going to pull it up here because it's not even the title, it's the quote that she opened up with. Um, that really like as soon as I read that, I was like, yeah, this is going to be really interesting. And it helped me with the pronunciation. It's Ibn al-Arabi.
Yeah, Ibn Arabi.
All of existence is ease, and ease is mercy. Though there may be weariness along the way, it is a weariness in ease. Um, Probably one of the prayers that my life is led by is, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. And mercy is ease. When we look at the world, it's just mercy. And I actually read into that, and I think the Quran opens up with, you're gonna have to help me with this. I'm gonna paraphrase it here too. Talking about Allah, the ever merciful, the all merciful, the ever merciful. So that together was just like the realization that yes, although we're going to be going on this path and it requires effort, which again is talked about in this chapter, it requires some ease, some mercy. And in order for us to experience mercy, at least my own personal experience of mercy, there needs to be surrender. Just absolutely needs to be a moment where you say, okay, I've done I've done what I could do individually, and now here's my cry for help. So I start praying, I start asking, maybe I start crying, maybe you start shouting into the wind, like I need something. And I think she does such a great job at um, elucidating that whole experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely on point. And to your point, it is that that ease, right? That's mercy. It's, I mean, it's, yeah, and it's already given, right? It's like it's already there available. It's already given. And sometimes you don't necessarily, at least for myself, I don't necessarily um can't necessarily count all the mercy that's being available, right? But to your point, that crying to the wind, like, I, I, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, like, um, and to be able to embody that mercy, that merciful quality, being able to embody that weariness in ease. I mean, it's funny that you started with the quote because even for myself, I highlighted that um, weariness in ease. Even talking to Antoine, sometimes part of our conversations, I hear him say, like, even through all this struggle, there's this bliss is just right there. I can feel it at the baseline, right? Even through all the turmoil, the waves, all of that kind of stuff, there's underlying current that's ease, and it's holding that weariness, right? And it's there's a verse in the Quran about that. It's "Inna ma'al usri yusra," which literally translates to that. There's ease in weariness. Um, so I'm with you, man. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's beautiful. Hmm. Anybody else has any impression, first kind of impression of the topic, or just reading the text? David.
Um, it's been a topic that I've kind of struggled with for many years, the path of ever versus the effortless path. And I, personally, and it's something that I see sort of across traditions, at least the ones that I've been exposed to. Um, for example, like in China, the the founding of the Chan school, or what we call Zen, it was founded on these six sort of key figures. And the sixth patriarch, Huineng is his name, he was this very poor, illiterate guy that heard someone reciting what's called the Diamond Sutra, which is a very significant Mahayana text. And he like attained some level of realization just from hearing it. And, and so he has no education. He doesn't really even know anything about Buddhism. And he sort of attained this level. And so it pushed him to sort of seek out a teacher. And so he went and he found the fifth patriarch and went to this monastery. And of course, he was not well received because he's very uneducated. How could this guy have any level of realization just from hearing something, right? And to make a long story short, eventually the fifth patriarch was like, okay, I'm looking for an heir, so I'm gonna give you a competition. Come up with a poem, and that'll determine who's my heir. And so the whole monastery thought it was gonna be this one guy. Can't remember his name. I'm looking. Shen Xiang, I think was his name. And he wrote this poem. I'm going to read it to you right now. It's very simple. The body is the Bodhi tree. That's the tree under which the Buddha attained enlightenment. The mind is like a bright mirror stand. At all times, we must strive to polish it and must not let dust collect. Right? So there's the effort that's describing it. And at all times, almost like nonstop, it never stops. You have to constantly assert yourself to be clear and to remove obscurations from your mind, to remove things that you think are bad, to remove things that are in opposition to your sense of goodness, right? And so Huineng, the illiterate guy, he went to someone. He's like, "Hey, can you write a poem for me? I'm going to tell you what to write, right?" And so the guy said, "All right, cool." So he wrote this on the wall, and he reads it like this: Bodhi originally has no tree. That's enlightenment. Bodhi means enlightened mind. Has no tree. The mirror has no stand. The Buddha nature is always clear and pure. Where is there room for dust? And this is just to say all phenomena, everything that arises, is of the same nature. That's enlightened nature. So what you're trying to remove is no different than yourself. It's just that your ego gets in the way and says, no, I don't like this thing. And then it becomes this level of opposition. But that's where we all are, right? That's our human condition. We like or dislike. That's how we move through the world. That's life, basically. That's how you know whether or not you should cross the street. I don't want to get hit by a car. I do want to get to the other side, right? So it's all these things. And so the answer, I don't know that I ever got an answer from there, but it's very fascinating to say, okay, so you kind of have these two ends of the spectrum, right? Where when I get to one end, there was no point in all of this. I still have to do all of this in order to get to this level of understanding. So the argument within that level of Buddhism was always like this fight between instant enlightenment versus gradual. The idea of like you kind of chip away, you poke holes, whereas other guys like, no, it's just a matter of like exploding, just sort of this, and all of a sudden you're in a state of enlightenment. But so I see that argument all over the place. It's ongoing, and I think it's hard to say because it's all based on the individual. It's all based on what you carry with you, what you've experienced in life, how much things pull you down, or you have heavy karma in your life. I certainly have my fill of trauma that to this day, even from when I was a little child to this day, certain things come along and oh, I'm right back in it, without even a thought. It's just boom, 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 and then the afterthought is like, whoa, I was back there again.
Yeah.
How'd that happen? And it's such an instant, it arises so fast. And so, I really was fascinated by Sara, the author's take on it, where you have to sort of reach this level of constraint where you almost feel like you just can't anymore. There's nothing to be done. And you're trying to push, you're trying, and you can't even move. And you guys are talking about, God's mercy, right? Or compassion. And an interesting thing about that is sometimes that comes in the form of wrath, like really severe wrath that's like coming down on you and raining down in really difficult ways to manage, to the point where you feel like your sense of self is going to dissolve because you just can't take it anymore. And she kind of like goes into a bit of a situation where there's this one person who's working with a sheikh, and she's starting to feel like this I don't know if this guy is really for me, like it feels like he doesn't care. It feels like he's almost torturing me. It didn't really resolve in this reading, so I wanted to like, I wish I kind of knew more about what was going on there, but I think that I've certainly experienced that level of constraint with spiritual teachers, and I think there's a saying like in Tibetan Buddhism where it's like, I think it's kind of like a derogatory saying is like, keep two valleys between yourself and your teacher. Because are you really sure you want to deal with that level of intensity, pushing at your ego and really like tearing it down. So I don't know where I am in that scenario. Like I kind of oscillate back and forth. I don't know how linear of a path it is, or if it's more like this cyclical thing, because I've sort of experienced different levels of constraint, whereas other points, tenderness sort of open things up for me really well. Just feeling like this brief moment of like connection with a person, just everything sort of opens up, and there's this ease that settles, and it's not I'm not grasping, I'm not hoping, it's just immediately present.
Right.
And so in that regard, I don't know that I need to torture myself to experience some level of clarity.
Hmm. Wow, that's beautiful, David. Thank you so much for sharing that, and that that story that you shared with the poem. How, like, it's so right on, like
Mhm.
right to the point. And I mean, it does kind of like to what you're saying. It's given us the space to like, and I think this is also what Austin was talking about earlier. It's like this moment of reflection, like, where am I on this? A matter of fact, do I need to know, first of all, right? I think that's the thing that it's like how much of this has to be conscious to the actual individual as far as knowing where they're at on that spectrum, right? But we, to some extent, also kind of like what you were saying, we experience it in some sort of way. Um, I mean, nowadays, you might call that rock bottom, let's say, in the sense of um, let's say finances. Somebody reaches rock bottom, and um, all of a sudden, it's bam, they have all this energy, and now they're out there doing because there's nothing else. There's no other option, and it's as if the universe just opens its doors. It's like here, um, and in relationships we see that also. Um, and I guess it's in every area, right? Even within this quote unquote spiritual realm, um, we see that as well as what is spiritual rock bottom looks like. And um, yeah, and you're right. It is totally subjective. Like we would only know where we're at. We're the only ones who would know, am I giving it my all? Am I doing my everything in my power that I can do? Am I doing that? And I think that's even for me, that's part of this knowing, like, okay, I know there's more that I can do, but I'm not doing it. Why? Is it because of fear? Is it because of this? Is it because of that? Um, and yet there are moments where it's like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I know what it is. I just don't know what it is exactly. Um, so wow, thank you so much for sharing. I just want to read RM its comment. She said when she wrote that first quote, also the that verse from the Quran came to her mind as well. The ease is wrapping the hardship. Yeah, absolutely. And Zindi is saying sounds like constraining the quote unquote I in order to surrender is like yoga. Yogast, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Would you mind elaborating on that, Zindi, please?
Yogasta Guru Karmani is a Vedic saying, and it means that we come into the center, and then from that center, we take action.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely. And it does feel like that. It does feel that I mean, you're talking about it in um now I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Zindi. Um, is can action be done in that regard, right? Like does one put that constraining on oneself? Can one do that from your experience? Do you have experiences in that regards?
Well, something this might correlate, I'm not sure, but when the first speaker, David, was speaking, like reminded me of when I used to power lift, and I made it to the USA team in 1999 and just keep getting up there. And I started feeling this sense of superiority. Now I already had gone through my basic awakening, and I plummeted. I lost humbleness. I was no longer acting from a quiet space within myself anymore. And I was brought down to my knees. And then it been a journey to get back up again.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I'm not sure if that correlates.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And that's, I mean, it's so interesting that you brought that up, because even in the text itself, where the author is saying this is not something that one can um, prepare for. It happens. Like one can't necessarily say, okay, I'm in a state of constraint right now, right? Or I'm gonna, right? It happens naturally. So, um, to your point in your experience, it happens. Like it was a byproduct of all these different experiences, and it just like, boom, it just the experience itself kind of bringing somebody down to their knees, like bam. Um, so yeah, absolutely, that correlates for sure. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think like had I not lost that sense of humbleness that was leading me like on what we call the ascension process after my basic awakening, I feel that I would have got I would not have the need to have been hit on my knees had I not lost that sense of humbleness.
Hmm.
Where before it was, I was in this state of flow and I had no idea. I didn't even know that I had been through a basic awakening. I had no idea. I just know that I was flowing once I got up the confusion level. And then the superiority, I um, started winning all kinds of competitions and like doing all kinds of stuff. And I lost the humbleness. And that's what brought me down to the knees, losing the humbleness.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, beautiful. And
Interesting
sometimes,
topic.
yeah, sometimes we don't know what that thing is, right? And it's, you know, um, to each, that's the thing, like each lesson is coming its own way. Um, Humbleness might be one to some, and we know what it is when it comes. Hopefully, God willing, if we have that consciousness, right, and awareness to know when it's like, whoop, here it is. I see it, and I surrender now and go up with it. Um, whether it's humbleness, whether it's somebody else might be the complete opposite, courage, action. It might come up as that, right? And that's the thing. It's never a one cookie cutter approach, right? Um, it manifests, this teaching is just manifests its way in the way that only we would know, kind of to David's point, right? God willing, and Austin also. I think that's why we're all some in different ways are pointing to, like only the subjective inner knowing, only we would know. Which is it's awesome, awesome. Yeah. RM says she's offering a quote by Rumi: "When the world pushes you to your knees, you're in a perfect position to pray." Yeah, absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Anybody else who would like to share their take on that, just their impression? Maya, Lean, Maya Abaza.
We are one. So I haven't finished this reading, but I'm more than halfway through. And when I first picked it up to read it, I just skimmed over the title, The Effort and the Effortless Path. It didn't, maybe I just wasn't in a space to let it ring up, but I just started reading. I was away. And at first it was talking about nafs and the ego, and I thought that that's where the text was headed. And then as I made it to around page 31, where she describes, she's talking about a traditional Sufi 40-day solitude called khalwa, where one goes into solitude for some amount of days. And there's a description of that diary. It's from an author called Michaela Otsel, maybe.
Mhm.
But that portion just felt like was so, I just wasn't ready for that. Like the text was headed somewhere else, and then it reached that point, and I felt like it just turned and was facing me, looking me in the eyes and saying, like reading my inner experience. The transition from day-to-day experiences of one day I feel only emptiness, burned out. I still keep wanting to decide for myself which way to go. And then the next day, she says, I give up. I declare myself helpless. I admit I am helpless. There's nothing I can do. And then the next day, she comes back up and she says, I'm fairly calm. I don't understand anything anymore, but all I can do is pray and do zikr and surrender to the meaning of Islam, just being at peace and surrender. And that journey is where my personal journey has been leading me on a day-to-day basis of striving to I can't even say to reach my goals, but striving to become this version that I'm seeking in this world, and then yet trying to sit back and allow it to happen. But it's I still I'm not sure how to just be moved by this current that she describes, like a current of ocean, how to surrender and allow the waves to carry me through. And that's the whole paradox. And that's when the title hit me. Okay, it's effort and it's an effortless path. And I think I'm learning this balance of putting in and absolutely putting in effort all the way to the point of muttar, to the point of like this is it, this is truly all I can offer.
Oh, we lost you. We lost the audio.
No?
No. Oh, here we go.
Subhanallah, that's all I had to say. Um, yeah, I think the last thing I was saying is learning this balance of putting in absolute effort with ease and with gentleness, like while practicing this rahmah and allowing things to be. But that is a lot easier said than done. And that's where the text was pointing for me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. That, I mean, that quote unquote version of the path, if you will, this internal journey, I think it's there maybe all the time. I don't know. Like at every stage it's there. This balance is there every stage. It was whether in the beginning and the end, in the middle, like and it's to your point, it's like, which is I guess the journal that you're pointing to. It's like from an outside perspective, right? To see, oh, I feel only emptiness. That's day 19, right? One day it's like I feel only emptiness. The second day I give up. The third day I'm fairly calm. I mean, somebody looking from the outside to that and be like, yo, are you good? Like, you sure you're okay? You might need some help, right? But I mean, that's an accurate way of describing that. And I feel confident enough to say that this inner experience is probably similar across the board. It just, we may not feel confident in expressing that in the fear of sounding like we're lunatics, in the fear of sounding like we're just one day absolutely so confident in my relationship with my beloved and in myself and in all of that. And then the next day I'm like, I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing. Then the day after that, I'm like, ease and the day after that, it's just wrath. And right? And it's sometimes we don't necessarily express those things in the fear of sounding like having some kind of a mental health breakdown, I guess, or um so seeing it, to your point, reading it from an objective kind of like a third party experience, and like, wait a second, I yeah, I see that. I've experienced that. Beautiful. Thank
Be
you,
like
Maya.
be like water.
Right.
Be like water, but it's tricky because what I've noticed is that it has a lot to do with your own vibration, like your level of fearlessness and your getting rid of the doubts in yourself and making the intention that whatever choice you're going to make moving forward with whatever it may be is for your highest good, and clearing that, and really just being fearless after that, just not having the doubt, because guess what, the effortless and the how much effort you're going to put into something and resist is going to be in conjunction with your level of how much fear and doubt you got inside going on. You clear that, guess what, the flow, the calmness just comes because it's in resonance with your own frequency of calmness. So the whole point is, with an effortless path, no matter what happens, you got to go back to mastering your own self and your calmness. Because even within the chaos, guess what? You're put into this timeless vortex of experiencing the effortlessness, even within the chaos. I've seen this with people who are in fearfulness, and they will be experiencing another reality of chaos. While I'm in the same room and my level of calmness is there, and I'm not seeing that. And it's all in conjunction with what I'm choosing to experience in the moment. It's all, I had to take that power back. And yeah, so it's a frequency thing. I look at it, effortlessness, as a frequency thing, and how smooth your path goes is conjunction with how high your vibration is, and or how low it is ultimately. That attracts exactly that. So
Yeah. And it's that fear, that's something, talking about that vibrational fear is, for me, it's not pretending that fear is not there. That's part of the thing, right? I can't pretend that fear is not there. However, fear is, it's just calling for that courage to emerge, right? And allowing for that surrender. So
yeah, just being
which
brave.
which ultimately does something to that vibrational quality that you were speaking about. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then just trusting God, ultimately, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel.
Right.
Just trusting that something outside of you will shape itself, and the mercy will ultimately grasp you in some way, to ultimately hold on to that and not your own effort. That way
Right.
you're more relaxed. You're not putting your effort is not the ultimate thing. It's something higher than you, and then ultimately that comes to intervene constantly in your life, and you're saved, and you're left remaining humble as well at the same time, because you see that it's actually ultimately a very overpowering mercy and all-encompassing mercy that's really holding you, even in that effortlessness, even in your own efforts. So, it's very humbling ultimately.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sana.
Yeah, that was beautifully expressed. It made me think about, we always read about these things that we are not our thoughts and we are not our body. But when I was in this group of meditators at the beginning of the year, and we were all meditating, and I had this experience of like witnessing my thoughts and my emotions in my body, and I was the awareness experiencing it, and I could feel and see how everything that was happening was bubbling up from my awareness, including the thoughts, my body, my emotions. And I got that, like, this is why certain people point to. Now, we know that there are definitely people out there physically suffering in however many ways. But this thing I had read one time said that, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly how it was, that 90% or something like that of our suffering is due to our inability to have intentionality with our thought life. A lot of our thought life and wants and desires have been conditioned by trauma and stresses from the past, social constructs, whether it's religions or jobs or family, culture. All these things have become impressions in our brain. And when I hear about, the system talking about NAS, I think about this thought life, this thought power that's created its own entity inside our brain. And so now this identification that we're having with what they're calling the ego is this sort of outside force that's been constructed inside our brain from all these conditionings coming in from every which way. And so as we're going into this essential nature or knowing ourselves as wholeness, it's this battle back and forth. Like I think they even said like these two beings trying to walk through one door at the same time. All these impressions, societal impressions, are now not just thoughts, but they are rooted in our brain. Like they're neurological pathways setting up our virtues and our belief systems and our emotions. And then we make choices and feel like we've done something based on the status quo that these societal norms have conditioned in our brain. And I feel like this text is pointing to, there's this space that's always been there, this pure consciousness that allows us to know ourselves beyond the conditioning that society or whatever has imposed onto us. One thing I wanted to read, which I really enjoyed everything about the text because I love the way it grapples with the psychology of, I guess, what I'm going to call spirituality. There were some things in there that I felt like was a bit off, like how, but I think it is not off in terms of Sarah's experience. Did I say her name? Sarah, who wrote this? But in the languaging she choose, in some places, are speaking to, at least from my perception or perspective, a relationship with God or nature that is less than what I know it to be. But that could be because of the projection that I'm putting onto her words in certain places, rather than what her actual experience is. Because I could tell from the text that she's definitely done, what is that thing she called it? Dwakwa, tasting, direct experience. And so her ability over however many years she's been teaching this, I'm sure she's found the proper words to say it. But it it really got good to me when she started, like around page 40 into the end, where she spoke about the necessity of the experience of tasting, I guess, that experience, rather than trying to, understanding that the effort needs to be there to kind of get to a certain point. But I'm paraphrasing, no level of mood making will allow you to taste it. You're not going to be able to think yourself into it or condemn yourself into it, like, oh, I was wrong or I was bad, or like, oh, I did great. Nothing like that is going to allow us to taste what Rumi is talking about when he says, You don't understand until you are what you are trying to understand. You don't understand until you are what you are trying to understand. But the paradox there is that you are never anything but what you're trying to understand. The problem is that our psyche has been taken over by so much conditioning that somewhere along the line when we were a baby, it was hijacked by this other entity that taught us how to be in the world. And so now we have to sort of, some people talk about killing the ego, other people talk about maturing the ego. I lean along the side of maturing the ego or integrating these navs, so however they might be, but it's about recognizing that essential nature that's been hijacked by societal norms. Because we are always that. He goes on to say, on the mystical path, knowing and being are identical. On the mystical path, knowing and being are identical. We understand through our state of being, and the scope of our knowledge expands with the expansion of our being, with the unveiling of the veils which have covered our being, with the unveiling of the veils which have covered our beings. I feel like those are the nafs or the social constructs or conditionings that's been imposed on our psyche. And because we are so identified with it, this identification causes us to suffer. But through practices like this and other things that people do, that identification is loosened and we begin to experience ourselves as we really are. And those things that once had our psyche so gripped begin to loosen up, and we begin to be able to utilize those as tools rather than those dragging us around like a slave to our own, to its desires. I'll stop there.
Amazing. Beautiful. Right on. That point, I think, is that knowing and being, that tasting. The word I think that you're referring to in Arabic is dhawq, which is tasting. They most of the time they would use it as like in order to know what, you can describe what honey is, right? You can describe what honey is to somebody. You can describe how it might smell like, the texture of it, the consistency of it, all that, and how sweet it is and all that. But they really won't know until they taste it. Then you would know exactly what honey tastes like. And some say that the only way to know what honey is to be honey, right? So that knowing and being, which is, I remember the first time even hearing that was like, wait, what? Right? I was introduced to, I don't know who, I don't know the name of the person. It was like, to know yourself, be yourself, right? And exactly, Austin said, I am that I am. It's like, what but how? How do I be myself if I don't know myself, right? So it's always this paradox that's presenting itself, that this consciousness that you're talking about, this ultimate consciousness that's the ground of it all, right? That we are it, and yet there's an unveiling that takes place, unlearning that takes place, unconditioning that takes place. And yeah, it does sound simply like being with a capital B. I love how you put it with a capital B, because it is like that. It does feel like that. And we taste it. I mean, we've all had experiences of that, and it's, for me, I think is that the challenge is be able to do enough of that unveiling, quote unquote, or unconditioning, so that more of that being can find its way through into the day-to-day, or into the persona or the character that is Osama, the personality that is, who I think and feel I am, right? So that being can start to surface start to be, to come to the surface. That You know, that is absolutely on point. I love that you said that. Austin.
Yeah, that man, I resonate with that so much because it's like it feels like the effort is not an adding to yourself. It's actually subtracting, right? Deconditioning. So the effort is to try not to be controlled by your unconsciousness, your reactivity, your emotional impulses, your thought impulses, which have been reinforced over and over and over and over and over again. And that is a huge paradox. Like we are that which we're looking for, but there's so much in the way of that, right? There's just so much in the way of that. Either you're peeling layers or you're just becoming more aware. And yeah, it does require effort to not, it does require effort to deprogram yourself. And then what you're left with is, well, what I think that you're left with, right? I mean, Anthony DeMello talks about it in his book Awareness, which is phenomenal. And he goes on to say that we don't necessarily need to be more. We don't need to do more. It's stop doing what you're doing, actually. Subtract all the illusions, all the conditioning from yourself, and you'll find that which you are. And he goes on to say, like, I can't tell you what you are. It's not a concept. It's not an idea. It has to be experienced. And even that is, he says in quotations, experience. Like, well, then you might take that on and say, well, this is what I am now. Again, but sort of along those lines with the importance of silence and of prayer, and fasting is such an incredible practice to do. And I've had a really beautiful moments in my fast where it got to the point where I was just like, all I did was just pray. And I actually, the next few days after that, was feeling way more energized than I did when I first started. And it was like, wow. And it also goes to the testament of sometimes we need this constraint, and sometimes we need to ask God for help, because then it actually helps us cultivate faith. Like, I feel like this is where this is leading to, like, having real faith, not just believing in it, not just saying like, oh, okay, well, this is going to work out for me. No. Like, we need to experience, you need to verify this for yourself. And this is what I really like about, what I was reading from the text. It's almost like she knows what it takes to taste that thing. And it's almost like she's giving the reader the option to, like, hey, every one of these spiritual texts is like giving us the option, like, hey, this is possible, but only for you to know this is possible, you have to experience it. And that's where faith, where I find that bridge between the two.
I love that you brought that to the conversation, because I think in the text, I don't know if it was her that described it as this quote unquote neediness, right? Which is beautiful, and it's, yeah, maybe I wouldn't have thought that to use that language to associate love and neediness. Typically in the Sufi tradition, they would use the word faqir, poor. I am poor to my beloved. Only there's only poorness to my beloved, meaning this neediness to my beloved. I don't want nothing else but my beloved God. I don't want nothing else but that. And that faith is I think what you're talking about, like, which is, it does come up in, you know, we can cultivate it in some type of way, right? And sometimes it's baby steps. It's like, okay, fasting, for example, which is fascinating. It's like a real physical manifestation of effortlessness and constraint, right? Like, it's an actual physical manifestation of that. Like, how is it that when I stop eating food after 3 days for not eating, only drinking water, all of a sudden this burst of energy just comes rushing, poof, inspiration, creativity, relationship, depth in perception, all these things. It's like, what? By not doing something right, by not introducing what quote unquote calories to my body, by not, so um I'm so glad that you brought that up to the conversation. That's beautiful. Um and yeah, this connection with love, neediness, faith, all of that is just, it's amazing. Thank you so much, David.
So many things bouncing off my head here. Something that sort of struck me a little ways back, and then I have a couple other things I want to address, but like the idea of effortlessness really sort of made me wonder, you know, existence is an effort. We exist through effort. And I mean, you can take it all the way back to the process from, birth, that created us in the ovaries, and, birth. All of that required effort, all of it. So the question is how to be effortless in a completely dominating effort field. And I mean, when you were talking about fasting, that's a perfect example of like flow state, right? Where you sort of hit this point, okay, I'm just doing this, like, all right, it's going to be 30 days, 28 days, whatever it is. I'm on day 5. Best not to think about it. Just do it. And you just sort of get into this flow. And, or if you go on like a very intensive retreat and, like, for example, like the Zen guys, I mean, like every minute of that retreat is mapped out for you. You are not thinking about, I want to do this, I'm going to go do this. So I feel like, no, you're just, boom, you're just in it, and you're just sort of being pulled along almost. Doing something like prostrations. We Buddhists do a lot of prostrations. So in some lineages, they make you do 100,000. And so when you're working on that and you feel the pain in your knees and your neck and your back, and you're like, I'm at 100, I want to do 300 today or something like that. You just sort of get into the flow. And at a certain point, this feeling of bliss comes about. Not in the sense of like, ego pleasing bliss, but just this sort of like looseness sweeps over you. And then, as the writer explained, you feel this, and then the ego kicks in. Ooh, I'm feeling it, right? Oh, this means something. I just leveled up. And then you just went down 10, right? But that is the sort of push and pull. I do feel that this text, although I think maybe the larger book maybe gives it more context, I do feel like there was a little too much hammering about that idea, like the ego's always getting caught up. I wish I remember this author's name. He was an Iranian psychologist who wrote quite extensively about Sufism. And he talks a lot about, the nafs. We orient the nafs. In a Sufi practice, the idea is to orient the nafs towards the higher rather than the lower. So it's not necessarily something you want to get rid of. In fact, you can't. But it's something that you want to sort of reorient, and that's a form of purification, right? And so in Buddhism, we call it the view. We establish a view of something, and then we rest in that view as we move through the world. And so that's like, that's what Buddhists really mean by mindfulness, not like the sort of mindfulness that we have in the West, but like mindfulness is like zikr, right? It's like remembering. this view. Okay, this horrible thing is coming up in my perception, and it makes me feel horrible. Oh my goodness. But my view says, my experience is entirely the product of my mind. That's not to say this thing isn't happening in front of me, but my experience of that is entirely in my mind. And what is that? Is that so if I ask myself, is that experience actually tangible? Can I touch it? I feel it, but like, is it actually a thing that's real, that exists in this reality? It's temporal. It doesn't have even a beginning or an end. It's just something that arises as this thing approaches me, and I'm judging it, and I'm resisting it, or I'm running towards it, right? I think I'm sort of getting a little off track, but there was something that Senna said. Senna, is that correct?
Yes, I was
Okay.
actually going to comment next on what you said. So,
But there was something that you said, and I hope I understand it correctly. Like, you could be in a room with another person, right? And you're experiencing one thing, and they're having a completely different experience of sort of the same thing. And the
yeah,
idea is there's this energy that's arising as a result of your experience of something. And you're both experiencing that energy, but based on your perceptions, you experience it completely different. So it's like you were saying,
yeah.
like an internal vibration contrasting with an external vibration, or
Well, the way it works is it's not contrasting. You just don't resonate with you. It doesn't touch you because it's a different energy than you.
Mhm.
So, given your own energy is what you're going to absorb in your exterior of a certain experience, which good or bad can be high or low. So, very spiritual is a high experience. A very fun, adventurous thing is a high vibration. A happy moment is a high vibration. A sad moment is a low vibration. A depressed moment is even lower than sadness. So it's like depending on your own vibration, you will attract a certain outcome or a certain. And Ibn Arabi talks about this. I think if you're familiar with his work, he also talks about frequencies in the form of levels, uh, hierarchies of levels of heavenly ascension, you could call it, but there's levels of how much happiness you can experience too, depending on your vibration. So yeah, it's just a very magical thing in the fact that it's so controllable. It's so you can manipulate it. You know, almost like a mini god, as they call it. You're becoming the divine within your body to be able to manipulate energy to the point where you can attract a certain destiny towards you. And there's different levels of what destiny you can attract. So you could go, one person, depending, could go this way. So one person could go higher. One person could go this way, depending on just your own, what your intentions and what your vibration are. So it's very flexible. And in any given moment, you can change that, which is the funny thing. It's not permanent. You can bend reality in every moment as you so choose. It's just hard to explain it.
Well,
But
I'm sorry, that's what I kind of mean by like applying the view, right? So if you have that perception, if you're aware of this, right, that what I'm experiencing is actually at an energetic level, and then you're sort of like layering meaning onto that, right? So, for example, there's this phenomena of more and more people are meditating now, and a lot of people are having what's called a Kundalini experience,
yep,
where they feel this energy rise up to the top of their head, and it's very intense.
I've experienced it. I know what it is. It electrifies
Okay,
your whole brain like it got fried.
yeah. And some people really can't handle it. Like it really is destabilizing for them, and they have months of recovery to deal
If
with
you
it.
force it, yes, which
Yeah.
Kundalini yogas, they force it and they're not ready for it.
But But the idea is like it's energy that's arising, but based on your constitution, your experience of the world, the traumas you have, the things you've gone through, you're going to interpret that differently than other people. And if you're not prepared enough to experience that, so this is the point of putting effort into the path, is to learn about these things and to apply them as you're experiencing these things as you go. You don't understand, like you think devils have entered your brain, like you might think you're
Right.
possessed, and you don't understand, like no, this is like this kundalini energy that's rising up.
Yeah,
Blah, blah, blah.
this is the toxins that are inside you from your ancestors, from your genetics. There was a big thing about clearing my genetics when I was going through my awakening, and purifying the junk. They call it junk in your DNA, and to purify it so you have pure DNA is what we're trying to get after. And then it also is in conjunction with the alchemical process, which they talk about in Sufism too. The getting rid of the sediments, the other elements that are inside you, and becoming purely gold. Where then you got a pure it's in conjunction with a pure consciousness, which is that gold consciousness, which is, they call it Christ consciousness. Buddha consciousness. It's that enlightened state where nothing you're influenced or guided by that's outside of you, that's fake or illusion, but it's pure guidance coming from heaven to you, and you're applying it in regular reality, which is why meditation is important, because it puts you in that void. It puts you, forget about everything else, go into that black void, and then see what guidance is coming in that void to you, rather than with a full cup. You're busy, you're full. How is the guidance going to come if you're full already, right? So you got to empty yourself first to be able to receive it, which, guess my friends, you need to be very humble and not be a know-it-all. And pride is the first thing that will block that guidance. I know. No, you don't know. In any moment, you don't know. You have to tread every moment like you don't know. And then you are guided like you know everything. So, it's like,
Yeah.
I know everything, but I don't know everything. To be able to inquire the all, you have to be willing to say, I am nothing completely. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you, David and Sana. I think that's it's a beautiful point that you both are expressing, and I hear I hear you both expressing pretty much the same thing in your own way and in experience. And this constitution that you mentioned, David, that the experience is colored by one's constitution of where they're at, right? Kind of like having that quote unquote mystical experience. And I think maybe this is what you're alluding to as far as Ibn Arabi. This is not related to this text, but I remember reading a part when he talks about this mystical experience being a direct reflection of the human's inner constitution of who they are, and it only changes in form. Knowledge is the same. Once that mystical experience happens, it only changes in form, right? So if to what you're saying, if it's if my surrounding is okay, my family is a line of psychics and and I have this mystical experience, then now I'm a psychic. If my line of family is prophets, I have now I'm a prophet. Right, or whatever tradition it is, it becomes, if that unveiling that Antoine was talking about before, this unconditioning is not happening simultaneously with this process, it will solidify and crystallizes in that form, right? And to Sanat's point, this humbleness that comes in at the same time that says, no, it's gonna stay dynamic. I don't know. it's gonna stay dynamic even after these experiences, even after this complete surrender for all of this to happen. I'm still in a state of I don't know, or receptivity, kind of like the other talk that we had, right? Constant state of receptivity. Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Antoine. Oh, you're muted, bro.
I was saying, yeah, it's beautiful what everyone is saying. One of the things that you all was just talking about reminded me of this section in the article on page 43, where Sarah began to speak about, I don't know the word, Wilaya, Osama, Wilaya,
Wilaya, sainthood,
Wilaya. And
which
in
means
this section, oh, sorry, what you say, bro?
it means sainthood.
Sainthood. And in this section, she gives, it's like she's speaking about some of the things that Sana and David was just mentioning. And I'll just read a section of it. She says that at this stage of inner peace and surrender, one lives in a state of complete receptivity, complete fluidity, complete transparency, and complete attentiveness to the divine hint. This is fire to me. To the divine hint. Such a one may also develop the capacity to put all appearances against him or herself, to change personas and colors according to the needs of the moment. It is very demanding and at the same time very inspiring to be around such people. They become transmitters of divine energy. There's a particular stillness around them and a constant sense of meaningfulness. This is the stage of Waliya, the stage in which the mystic becomes the friend of God. Wali. That's all I wanted to read.
I
Right on
love
point.
that.
Right on point. Right on point.
You know,
Yeah.
I have my, I'll share a little bit. I'm not gonna brag, but I have at my work, because I'm an instructor, so I teach art, and in the end I invented a way for them to write reviews for the place. And guess what? I invented this idea to offer them instructor painting for free to make a draw, and they win and they have to write a review. So we're encouraged to say our names when we're writing the review. Guess what? I got the most reviews on their page. Sana, the best instructor. And the big manager's like, how did you do this? Like, why are there so many compliments? Because I know how to get to people's hearts. I know how to I like bend and become them. And so I can get into their, I experience them from them without judgment. And it's like so, like, makes me so happy to be able to influence people from their level. You have to literally go inside them, be them, and then, bring them. So it's like that. It kind of reminds me of that wali. So I got a painting that says Al Wali in a flower. It's just beautiful all around, like a Mandela flower. It attracts beauty, it's beautiful, and there's no doubt about it.
That's
It is a
beautiful.
wali.
My son's going, she is a wali. Yeah, sure.
He is a wali. He is a wali.
That's
We
beautiful.
all
That's
are.
beautiful.
He is a wali.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sana. I want to be respectful of each one of you's time. I know we kind of hit, time becomes so interesting in these kind of conversations, right? It's like, what is going on? But before we depart, I just want to touch base with the folks who didn't get a chance to either jump in the chat or express, and just give the floor if there's anything. Philippe and JH, RM, any last thoughts from anybody here? Would love to to hear any feedback. That would be great if you guys are up to it. I don't want to put anybody in the spot. In the meantime, I think Abe also has something to share as well.
I do, and I did my due diligence to be practice of mine as patient as possible to hear the fullness and the fullest expressions of everybody on this call. And there's a few points, so I may stray beyond time, but my hope is that if you have the time to stay, it would be an absolute pleasure. I'll only take up 5 minutes or maybe 6 minutes at the most. But if anybody who wants to share something that hasn't shared, by all means, just raise your hand or cut me off. I'd be more than happy to provide the space to do so. The first thing that I kind of noted, which is a hodgepodge of a lot of expressions this evening, and I'm bummed that Lean and Maya left because there's something that they also said that this possibly could have been of service for them, their process. So what I wrote just on the top was a beautiful encapsulation of this text by the entirety of this group. I'm truly blown away by the synthesis and what everybody is pointing to, despite where they're physically at, their cultural background, their own history, and it's just fascinating to see. And a theme for me that came up from this week, especially hearing everybody's expression, kind of confirmed it, is that um, a true transformation lies not in striving, but more so in yielding to stillness, where the self softens, effort dissolves, and this quietness, that presence of that unity just almost naturally is revealed. And it reminds me of a quote of a text of a book that maybe some of you may know, some of you may have never known. And that book, it's called Life is Real Only Then When I Am. And very, quite frankly, pointing to something that I've kind of heard here. And now I want to kind of get to the meat and potatoes. We have a WhatsApp group. I am finding there is this delay from having only one book club once a month. And at times, Osama receives emails and correspondence, thank goodness, and everything else that Osama does respond and connects with a lot of other people offline. But we formed this WhatsApp group and we're going to start it off. And I want to start it off with an actual practice and something that I would want to share with each of you. Is that okay if I take a minute to share it and then I'll post it on that WhatsApp group? Everybody cool with it? So, and it's funny because I wrote this before hearing any of your thoughts. I actually got inspired after hearing a call that Osama and Antoine had this morning where I had to leave. So this was actually inspired by a piece of their conversation, which I think could be of the utmost service to myself and everybody as well. I imagine that many of you have, at some point in your life, felt the subtle tension between holding back and stepping into your own light. It's not always easy to navigate the unspoken weight that such hesitation carries. Perhaps you felt unsure about embracing the spaces that naturally draw you in, wondering if acknowledging your own gifts might somehow limit their authenticity. Maybe you've hesitated to let yourself be seen more fully, fearing it might affect the purity of your intentions. Doubts arise, and the self can hold sway, common hurdles on any sincere path of development. But let's yield for a moment. Lift your head, take a deep breath, and look around you. Look within you. See, hear, smell, taste, touch. You are here in this gathering because something within you has called you forward. What is that inner voice? What light is quietly glowing within you, waiting to shine? I met a man once who I spent years with. The more time that I spent with him, the more time that I began to inevitably spend with myself. A saying to this day that was shared with me, which still rings in my ear: to know everything, it is necessary to know only a very little. But to know that very little, one must first know pretty much. We all experience moments of doubts and hesitation. It's part of the journey. Yet perhaps this very hesitation is an invitation, a starting point in our development, to allow light to shine without the need to name or limit it. Others may have already sensed this light, drawn by the authenticity and sincerity you embody, even if you haven't fully recognized it in yourself. Remember the spaces we create. These containers for truth and connection are filled with courage and integrity. They exist because each of us brings something unique, something luminous. This light is as close as your own breath, arising from the deepest parts of your heart, guiding you on your path. So over the next month, I invite you all to a simple, honorable practice. Each day, find a quiet moment to sit with yourself. Close your eyes fully or gently, allow them to rest. Take a few deep breaths and ask yourself, what is within me that seeks expression today? Listen softly without judgment or any need to act. Allow whatever arises to be acknowledged, heard, felt, and understood. This is not about forcing action or doing something because you think you should. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, deeply listening. By this practice, it may allow space for authenticity to emerge in its own time, a foundational step in development, yet simple and profound acts of recognition and acceptance. We cannot pretend that this path is always easy. Doubts will arise and challenges will come, but all this is part of growth. Behind the clouds, the sun is always shining and it never goes away. Honor this rare and sincere unfolding within each of us. It's simple and it's honorable. So I'll be posting this on the WhatsApp group. I will be partaking in that practice, which is a simple question when it comes up for me. I do make it my due diligence to journal each day, but I'd be curious in this group to hear what actually comes up for each of you, whether it's simply posting a picture of a tree that is red and on fire and you're noticing it more, or if something uncomfortable comes up. I think community is the antithesis of learning for us to see each other. And it would be such an honor and a privilege to grow along and learn along each of you because you guys are incredibly wise. So that's the intention. I hope you all take us up on it or take the opportunity as the door is knocking. And the certainly the door is always open to each of you. So that's what I wanted to share. Hopefully it was
Wow.
an interesting little perspective. It's funny, a lot of things that I wrote way before this call, y'all were talking about space and light and so many other things. So it's either happenstance or fate. I'll let you all determine that.
Wow. That's gorgeous, bro. Thank you so much for sharing that, for initiating that.
My
Such
pleasure.
a beautiful yeah, such a beautiful thing. Thank you. Amazing. Can't wait. I
So we'll see you all in the WhatsApp group. I believe Osama, maybe he'll send out an email as well, because I don't know how many people are on their phones.
yeah.
And connect as much from there and see where the conversations go.
Yeah, I put it in the chat here. And I will send it in an email as well. I think that's one thing that selfishly we're realizing, and the more we hear people talk about community, cultivating that, you know, so that's beautiful initiative. I love that. Thank you so much, Abe. It's
Wonderful.
beautiful.
Yeah. And then the book
Amazing.
next month, I didn't tell Osama just yet. I'm waiting for permission from somebody to use it. It's a book that I guarantee nobody here has read, or I guarantee
That's
never has,
intriguing.
because you cannot get it digitally. It is only printed by demand to this day. So if you need to order it, they have to actually, I don't know if you've ever seen a book binder, they have to actually press the pages. And I'm lucky enough to have a few copies of it, but I want to ask for permission before I share a part of it. Probably one of the best books that I've ever read, I can consciously say, in the past 20 years. And it's a fascinating book. Zindi, I'll let you know for sure once I get permission from them, because I'm going to give you all little bits and pieces and parts. It's
That's the anticipation. Abe is like, woo.
I want to make sure I
Let's
hear it from them
keep us on
first.
our toes. I
If they
love
say
that.
no, then I have to deviate. So I don't want to put it out there just.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait for their permission first.
That's beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, bro.
Pleasure.
Appreciate that. Wow, what a beautiful way to end this gathering with you, man. I am inspired. Thank you guys so much, like honestly, and for the people who um are here. Philippe, would love to hear your voice, my brother.
Yes. And it's like a short form. I read the page, but for me, I took some notes. I think it's really important to memorize and to understand many persist with the things. So if you can like copy and paste and read and reread, a lot of times when we are trying to understand, we can understand like the main point of the view, but when we're trying to go more deep to try to get more ideas about the topics, we have to return and go back like 2 or 3 paragraphs and then read it again to try to capture the idea of the author. And for me, I think it was really amazing. I I really enjoy it. A lot of times I can perceive during my life, during the people lives about, for example, if we are going at the same direction in huge groups, it's really difficult to try to pass through the door, yes. So for example, it's happened because for me it's like a duel between your idea and the opposite of your idea. So it's like the positive fighting against the negative, and we are really thinking about which one is the correct. A lot of times we don't know. It's like an indecision, and we have to take the decision. And for me, I think I give you one example. At the same time that I really like and I love the technology, I can see the new cutting edge. I can see also the nature um, giving for us um, signals. So one thing of my mind or mm, or of my thoughts guide me to defend more the nature if if the decision I prefer defend the nature. And I really understand the fact that the technology and how can I explain, for example, the idea to develop the planet, the idea to um, just don't care about the life of the people and be more care about themselves, like the leaders of the world now, they are thinking about themselves and they not think in large groups, they not think in community. This is just a reason, it's just a comparison that that um, appear now in my thoughts. So I think this is how can I participate today, and I really enjoy one more time that I'm here and I joined the group, and it's really amazing to be a part of the, the that program, and I'm really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philippe. I'm glad that we get to hear your thoughts on this. This is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And yes, it does um this time of contemplation, right? Of like reading and sitting with it and reading and sitting with it and reading and sitting with it. Um and taking that and going out to nature and seeing how does it feel? How does all of this stuff feel within internally within ourselves? So thank you so much for the contribution. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, as per usual now, maybe we should extend these talks, but this is awesome. It's beautiful. Yeah, so I'll be sending the WhatsApp link again for the people who came on this group, and as an email. And I'm looking forward. We're looking forward to seeing you next month. I'm really excited. This solid group of people, that so many different ideas and views, and we're constantly learning, I think, from each other. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence tonight. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys. And hopefully we get to see you soon, God willing.
Have a great night.
Have a good night,
guys.
y'all. Beautiful. See y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Good
night.
night.
Night,
Night
good
indeed.
night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love you, Osama.
I love you, bro.
Have a beautiful night. See you, RM. Have a beautiful night.